And now there is a case here. The yield of a chemical reaction was thought to be a function of three variable formulation, maybe the composition, right? Just now we were talking about the proportion of the chemicals. They call it formulation. And then the mixer speed. There is a mixture which is keep on running during the chemical process is going on. And then the temperature, you set it at different level. An 8-run 2-level experiment was conducted based on these three factors. And now why we wanted to optimize the yield? Yield is here. So the response variable, right? The response variable. Maybe the response variable, you can consider this as a chemical process yield or some variable of your interest from the chemical process, right? No, some number is indicated. Very good. So now there are three factors, F, S, and T, each at 2 level. That means totally 8 runs. 8 runs, the standard order is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 4 minus, 4 plus. Double minus, double plus. Single minus, single plus, right? So now this is called what? Design test matrix. Test matrix. And now do you see some new order given here? Random order. What is this random order? That means my first experiment will be the second combination. What is second combination? F low, S low, T high. This is my first experiment. What is my next experiment? This one, 7th row.
Plus 1 minus.
Very good. This is called randomization. Why we are randomizing? We wanted to minimize the effect of certain noise factor, right? Otherwise, what happened? The number of noises and the effect of the noises will get amplified. We don't want that to happen. Always you must randomize. And then people have to run the experimentation according to the random order only, not based on the standard order. Now these results are obtained. Maybe the outcome of your chemical process, you measured it in certain unit, and we are not really worried about these units and other things. We are worried about the number. And please note, we want to maximize our Y. 8 runs we have done. Now there is no replication. Actually, in real time, you must do replication also. Only to simplify the calculation, I removed the replication. Generally, there will be a replication because only replication can help you to account the experimental error. So 8 readings, and now certain calculation you have to do. Then only you will be able to calculate the main effect. Then only you will be able to calculate the interaction effect. Then only you will be able to optimize your Y by optimizing your X. Then only you will be able to write the regression equation also. Everything we are now going to do manually. And then we will make some software to do it for us later on, right? And now, how many readings we have? 8 readings. With all 8 readings, tell me, will you be able to calculate the grand total?
Yes.
Summation of all the 8. So grand total is understood. Then you need to find out something called correction factor. You need to calculate something called correction factor. Grand total square divided by n, where n is number of trials at, where n is the number of readings, right? Where n is the number of readings. So grand total square divided by n. So 1383 squared divided by 8 will give you this much. If somebody can check also if you want, right? So if you have a calculator, you can do that. And then now we go for main effect. Do you remember we understood the formula already? We discussed. What is the formula to understand the main effect? The average of the response when the factor is high minus the average of the response when the factor is low. Average is nothing but sum divided by number of readings. There are 8 readings. How many readings are for factor A? 4 readings. 4 readings for factor B. So sum main effect can be calculated by this formula, right? What is the formula? Sum when the factor is high minus sum when the factor is low divided by number of runs at each level. For high, it is 4 readings. For low, it is 4 readings. Am I correct? So what is n here basically? N is number of trials is 4.
4 per reading. Okay.
Sum divided by number of trials mean average. Average of your reading when the factor is high minus average of your reading when the factor is low. This is what we learned. Then sum of squared variation. Sum of squared variation means this sum, you have whatever you have, you square it and then divide it by total number of trials. What is the total number of trials in our experimentation? 8. So sum of sum high minus sum low for each factor, that is squared divided by total number of trials, and that will give you the value. And then we have something called squared sum. Squared sum means we have 8 readings. Square each of the reading and then sum it. That is called squared sum. And then total sum of squares. What is total sum of square? This squared sum minus correction factor. Squared sum minus correction factor, that gives you this thing. Now percentage contribution of each factor on your response variable can be obtained by sum of square of each factor divided by total sum of square. Sum of square of each factor divided by sum of square is here for each factor and total sum of square is here. I divide that gives me percentage contribution. And then average response means all the 8 responses are added divided by 8, that gives me average response. Do you understand all the calculations here? We are going to do it in the next page.
Yes.
Right, we will do it now. Now, all the test matrix is available here. All possible combinations are available. See here, factor T low, factor S low, factor F also low. Now, what is this factor?
Interaction.
2-level interaction. When there are 3 factors A, B, and C, 3 2-level interactions can be either AB or BC or CA. Since it is TSF, it can be TS or TF or SF. And 3-level interaction will be A into B into C. Clear?
Yes.
So, when all the 3 factors are low, that means my interaction factor TS will now act at its high. How do I know?
There is a plus.
T into S, minus into minus is plus. Will you be able to set your interaction factor? Will you be able to set your formulation?
Yes.
Yes, you can set your formulation at low. You can set your speed at low. You can't directly set your interaction factor TS, but by setting T also low, setting S also low, it actually means you are setting the interaction at high. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
How do I know? Minus into minus is plus. Same way, TF is minus into minus plus, everything is plus. 3-level interaction will be minus. Why? 3 minus, when I multiply, it will be minus only. This is what is giving me the first result, 164. Similarly, I got 8 reading, out of which the green color readings are the readings I highlighted only to simplify your understanding. My first factor is at low, factor T is at high at 4 points, and those are highlighted in green color. The white color readings are the response when my factor T is at low. Why it is highlighted? So that we can calculate the effect of T easily, right? Without confusion. Now, the calculation comes here. How many factors now you see? T, S, F, TS, TF, SF, and TSF. Now, how many factors we are including in our study? 7 factors. What generally people think? There are only 3 factors. And now you are working as a black belt in your project. Now you are taking 4 more factors into effect, and you are studying their effect also. And over and above, there will be a noise factor. That will be our next stage. And now the total response for factor T when it is at high is 695. How this 695 came? Sum of all the highlighted reading. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Similarly, what will be the total response when your factor T is at low? All these white color reading.
All white readings.
Very good. So this 695 understood, 688 understood. Same way, can you do it for all the remaining?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Now we go to the difference. What is difference? Delta. Sum at high minus sum at low. That is 7. sum. And now, in order to calculate the main effect, I should not rely on the sum. I should rely on the average. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
How do I get average? Each sum comes from 4 readings. So I divide it by 4. Now 1.75 is the effect of factor T. Minus 4.75 is the effect of factor S. Do you understand how the main effect is calculated?
Yes, sir.
Very simple, right?
Yes, very simple.
Yes.
Now it is not like what we discussed. So, but without the discussion, this cannot be simple. Right. And now delta square. Delta square is understood.
Yes, sir.
And now sum of the squares for each factor is nothing but delta square divided by total number of readings, 8. Delta is 1.75. Delta square is,
49.
sorry, delta is 7. So delta square is 49. Right? And delta is minus 19. Delta square is 360. Why do we square? We wanted to understand the variation, whether it is minus or plus, right? When I sum up, it should not cancel each other. That is why I'm squaring. I squared and divide by 8. Now this is called sum of the squared difference for each factor. And now the percentage contribution needs to be calculated. What is the influence each factor has on my y? For that, I calculate total sum of square. What is the total sum of square? I simply sum up all these things. That will be 876.875. Now you see, let us go back. We calculated this already, 876 somewhere. We have not. Do you see here? Yes. You see here?
Yes.
Squared sum minus correction factor 876. Here also it is 876. Here also you can cross verify. Oh, sorry. 876. Now total sum of square is understood. Now contribution of each factor on your response can be understood by dividing this effect, by the total sum of square. Can somebody check 6.125 divided by 876? Are you getting this number? 6.125 divided by 876. Are you getting 0.69? Are you getting 0.69 or you are getting 0.0069?
Point 0069.
0.0069. So I want to convert that into percentage. So I multiply by 100. So it is 0.69. That means each number what you are seeing on my slide is a percentage contribution. In order to get the percentage contribution, I should multiply by 100. So what do you understand? 93% contribution is from the factor F. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
And 5% contribution is from the factor S. Not even 1% for the factor T and not even 1% for the interaction effect. That means in this case, in this problem, factor T is considered to be insignificant effect. Anything less than 1%, we really don't consider as significant. And so we are going to ignore T as well as the interaction for further discussion. Is it okay for all of you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right? Because I really don't want to waste my energy by working on these factors. So I will simplify my problem now.
Yes, sir.
And now I create a table. This table is called ANOVA, analysis of variance. This table is called ANOVA, analysis of variance. Now, how many factors are considered here? 2 factors. This is now called two-way ANOVA. This is now called two-way ANOVA. This is first factor and this is second factor. And this is the total effect. What you have not understood using the factor, the certain effect you have understood from the factor S and F. But then the total effect is this much. So the difference is nothing but the error effect. Can I say? The total 876, what you got here, the total sum of square 876 is written here. The sum of squares for the factor S is how much? For the factor S, what is the sum of squares you have?
5.1.
45. That 45 is written here. Then for F, what is the sum of square? 820. This is how many time also will work. That 820 comes here. Now, 876 is this much. We considered only 2 factor. So many things we have not considered apart from noise factor, isn't it? All of those things are now will be called as error. Can I say?
Yeah.
The difference
Yes.
between this total and these two sum of squares is the error in the variation. Sum of the squares of the variation due to the error is 11.625. This error has to be minimum. This error has to be minimum. Then only you can find the significant findings. And now degree of freedom for factor S. How many levels you have? 2 levels. So degree of freedom is always n minus 1. So 2 minus 1 is 1. For factor F, there are 2 levels. So degree of freedom is 1. Total, for total, the degree of freedom is 7. Because totally, how many readings you have?
8.
8 readings. So 8 minus 1 is 7. When total degree of freedom is 7 and factor degree of freedom are 1 each, and then for the error, the degree of freedom is 5. Am I correct? You add all the thing, you get the 7. Clear?
Yeah.
Yes. And now I go for mean sum of square. What is mean sum of square? I divide this squared variation by degree of freedom. 45.1.25 divided by 1 again gives me 45.125. 820 by 1 gives me 820. 11.6 by 5 gives me 2.325. You don't have to calculate anything for this because there is no need to do this, right? For the total. So the 3 you have done. And now after mean sum of squares, you need to calculate an F score. You need to calculate an F score. How to calculate the F score? Like I taught you the Z score, how to calculate Z score. Observed value minus target value divided by population standard deviation. Then that Z score I will compare with standard normal distribution table value of Z score. If the calculated Z score is more than the table value of Z score, what will I do? I will reject the null. Am I correct? You remember our discussion?
Yes.
Calculated Z score, if it is more than the table Z score, I reject the null. And that will definitely appear in my p-value. How it will appear? My p-value will go below 5% whenever my calculated statistics exceeds the table statistics. Now we will go for F table. Why F table? All these things are variance. When the statistics is mean, we use that score. But now what are we using? We are using the squared values. Squared values are what? Variance. That is why it is called analysis of variance. See, for variance, you must refer to a table called F table. And F calculated value is nothing but the mean squared variation divided by the variation due to the error. 45 divided by 2.325. How much it is? 19.4086. You can cross verify. Similarly, the calculated value of F score for the factor F is 821.125 divided by 2.325. That will be how much? 352. Clear? Now you go to the F table and now you can check the F score using your degree of freedom of the factor and degree of freedom of the error. Degree of freedom of the factor is 1. Degree of freedom of the error is 5. And what is your level of significance in your study? 5% always. Go to the F table for 5% level of significance. There are 2 data required. One is error degree of freedom. Another one is factor degree of freedom. And now you can pick up an F score from the table. And you can also generate the F score using Excel also. If you have an Excel file, simply go to a cell, type equal to FDist and put the F stat score. What is the F stat score? 19.4086, right? F statistics. And degree of freedom for the factor is 1, degree of freedom for the error is 5. And then close the bracket, you put enter, p-value will come. Right? And that p-value is given here by me. Either you go to the table or you generate it from the Excel. How much is the p-value? Now tell me, what is this p-value? How is this p-value looks like? It's less than 5% or more than 5%?
Less than 5.
Less than 5%. That means what should be your conclusion in hypothesis testing? You must reject the null. What is always our null? Factor does not affect the result. But you have to now reject that statement. That means what? Factor affects the result. So you need to optimize the factor to optimize your result. Now, how do I optimize my factor? See here, I reject the null hypothesis. That means the effect of the factor yes when it is kept at high is not equal to the effect of the factor yes when it is kept at low. Now my question is whether I should keep it at high or keep it at low. What is your requirement? Your y should go high, go up, or come down. You want your y to go up because y is the yield of the process, right? Or something variable which you want to see, growing. And now go to your y. Okay. The factor yes, factor yes. We are talking about yes only, right? Yes. Okay, it is critical. Now factor yes, when it is high, what is the result you got? Total result 682. When you keep the factor at low, what happens to the result? 701. Now tell me which is good for your process. Keeping the factor at high is good for you or keeping the factor at low is good for you?
Low.
So that is the solution. Set the factor yes at low. Right? The mixer should be run at low speed so that you get your chemical process yield maximized. All of you understand how we optimized?
Yes.
The levels you have chosen. You have understood that in your company there are only two levels possible. Either I can set the speed at 1000 RPM or 1200 RPM. No other option exists. So as of now, 1000 is the best, right? And now similarly for F also the p-value is less than 5%. So I need to reject the null. So how to select the level for F? Come to the F. And when it is high, I get 732 as the total. When it is low, I get 651. It clearly makes me understand that I must keep the factor F to maximize my yield. So I will set the factor F at high. Setting an appropriate level for the factor is nothing but the treatment. Now you have given a treatment to the problem. Now the pain will come down. Results will go up. Am I correct?
Correct.
You are very sure, right? And this is how DOE works. It's a very simple case. And you can always learn the complicated case also from us. We'll be doing an exclusive program on DOE. We'll be letting you know. And then, it can be a topic for 2 full days of discussion, right? But as a black belt, this is, all the terminologies are discussed with this problem. And then you take any complex case, definitely, it will be out of our discussion only. And now, prediction equation, nothing but the regression equation. How to write the regression equation? The method is y equal to f of x. Y equal to f of x. Now, how many critical factor? 2 factor critical. S is critical, F is critical. So, these two will participate in my equation. These two will participate in my equation. Right? And now, the formula is y equal to average response plus a coefficient. What is this coefficient called? Regression coefficient. This is called regression coefficient for the factor S, and this is for the factor F. And how do I write this number S? Do you remember we have seen this 4.75 somewhere? Where is this 4.75 here? Do you see here?
Effect.
The main effect of the factor S is minus. So minus 4.75 divided by 2. What is this 2? The number of levels we considered for study, right? Low and high. So 4.75 by 2 will be the regression coefficient. Similarly, for F the number will be 20.25 divided by 2. And now, do you see the regression equation now for you, for your problem? If you put all your data in Minitab, what it will throw out? It will throw out only this equation. Now, what we did? We generated the equation ourselves. Only thing we did is we kept the problem little simple, right? But even if a complex situation comes in your project, there are so many factors, so many levels, right? Collect the data proper way. Now you know how to collect the data, right? You collect the data and feed it, and then all the calculation will be taken care. Then you will be able to optimize the result. So design the experiments helps us to optimize the solution, right? Already you understood through hypothesis testing, this is the critical factor and all those things. You got some idea, but then you have now, you made your solution, very precise. If you want, you can always increase the level and then still go for the better one. Here we included only low and high. You can always increase more number of levels, low, medium, and high, and very low and very high. That means your results will much more, be closer to the nominal. A pilot study is always performed in a smaller scale in order to confirm the results, through DOE. A full-scale implementation plan you must create now after doing the pilot, and full-scale implementation plan will include your FMEA. Why? Because by making changes in the process, the risk should not increase. I made changes in the process, my results goes up, but it leads to now it now leads to a lot of accidents. I should not, make improvement in that way. So I must always do the risk assessment, FMEA, and then I will create an implementation schedule. And I will also, at this point of time, I will do a cost benefit analysis, how much I spent, and then what is the benefit expected at least for a year, and all those things. I will see to that my cost benefit ratio is healthier. And then I will create a training plan and communication plan. And then I will communicate all the changes made to all the stakeholders very effectively and train them before the new system, new process is in place, right? And the improvement post full-scale implementation. Now the solution is implemented, like you might have learned POO matrix, PUG matrix, and many other things. There are so many solutions, for a problem, several ways by which you can implement your understanding. Which particular way will be, more suitable for your company? And you can use POO matrix or the other techniques or some way of prioritization. I want to know the order, which is best and which is worst, and then I will go for the best. Use any tool. It can be a prioritization matrix, or it can be a Pareto, or it can be a POO matrix. There are different names. Ultimately, we are expecting you to prioritize correctly, right? And then after implementation, you can recalculate your metrics, whether they are now improved or not. If you actually optimize the X variable, that will reflect in your CPCPK, right? CPCPK, PPPK, sigma level, and everything will improve. And always, when you are collecting the data, you must do MSA. It is not that MSA you do only in measure phase. In the improve phase also, I will do an MSA. Why? Because measure phase I have done 3 months back, and now improve phase, in order to validate my result, I will again use my measurement system. So I will again, do an MSA if needed, right? So all these tools are non-linear. Some tools are used again and again. And again, you can check that your solution is effectively implemented. That is again called an hypothesis testing. You can go left and right, up and down with all the tools, and ultimately we will get our problem solved and we will get our results improved. So that's it about the design of experiment. And probably this, maybe I can share the same data with all of you. If you are interested, you can practice. But how to create all these results in Minitab? You have, a session. Mr. Vinod Shankar will teach you. All the calculations, what you have learned, can be easily handled using Minitab. Can be usually carried out using the template shared by Dr. RK. But you should know how to use them. Garbage in, garbage out, right? If you feed the input correctly, the output will come correctly. But if you feed the input wrongly by putting irrelevant data you give, results will give, completely a different result. Okay. Any questions? Any doubts? Is it easier? DOE is easier now?
Yeah, seems so.
Looks easier, right? Should be easier. Right. So now you have analyzed well, and you are now good to generate the solution, and also you have the knack of getting implemented. Now, if the problem is solved, now your next job is you need to retain the gains. Am I right? You need to, now that you learned DOE, now how will you see yourself? Remember the learning and then use very well in your project. You have certain control measures. Probably you will take some notes. You keep the notes carefully with you, and then always you can refer to. You can watch come back and watch the videos, and then you can keep. You may now buy a good book on DOE, and then all these things will make sure that you retain the gains, you retain the learnings, and then practice them effectively. Same way, you have solved a problem in your company. Can you come out with certain idea by which you help your people, because you are not going to monitor the project further. You, as a black belt, you will move on. You take up the next important problem and then start your focusing your energy there. Now all the knowledge you have gained in the define phase, you have gained in the measure phase, you have gained in the analyze phase, you have gained in the improve phase. Can you make it as a easily understandable and implementable, practicable document and pass it to the future generation, or the future followers, the process owners and who are involved? You will hand over the process back to the process owner.
Yes,
Can you also hand over all these documents? Your documents will fill up your absence. All your learnings are now handed over to the team. How many sample you should take, how the sample should be collected, which control chart should be plotted, if a point goes outside the control limit, what they are supposed to do, or if the measurement error happens, what kind of MSA they should do. All that you have done.
yes,
Make it as a document and pass it to them. The process flow chart of the original version, and now process is changed. Certain steps you have removed, certain modification you have done. Now the updated process flow chart, all that are now handed over. Why you are interested in doing this? Because you want your company to sustain the benefits for a longer period of time. If the process is run in the new way, it can give your company a saving of 75 lakhs every year. If it is followed properly, every year there will be an additional saving of 75 lakhs. Otherwise, you will revert back to the same condition and then the same problem will come again. So this is the goal in control phase. Now our focus is no more on the Y. Our focus is on the X. What are the X? The critical X. Identify the critical X. Understand your X is a continuous variable or a discrete variable. If it is continuous variable, plot an appropriate control chart. It can be either X bar R chart, or it can be either X bar S chart, or it can be IMR chart. How do you understand? If only individual readings are possible, you need to plot it using IMR chart. If you can take multiple reading, we call it subgroup. You can plot them using X bar R chart, or you can plot X bar S chart. If my subgroup size is less than 8, I plot X bar R chart. If my subgroup size is more than 8, I will plot X bar S chart. Clear? I will prefer one of these three charts when my data is continuous. Now, do you understand why it is very important to look at what kind of data we are working? Right? The type of data and the scale with which you measure gives you a lot of maturity. You will effectively monitor the process and then effectively control your result. So this is for the X factor. And similarly, suppose if your X factor is not a continuous variable, maybe a discrete or an attribute type. Now you have 4 types of control chart: P chart, NP chart, and then C chart and U chart. Right? P chart, NP chart, C chart, and U chart. And now, if you are focusing on, try to understand whether you are trying to control the defects or defectives. Trying to control the defects or defectives, because the attribute data or discrete data are nothing but the countable data. What do we generally count in our company? We count the defects. We count the defectives. Am I right? So if it is defect, you need to plot either a P chart. Sorry, if it is a defect, you need to plot either a C chart or a U chart. If it is a defective, you need to plot either a P chart or NP chart. So there are 7 types of control charts that exist. What are the 7 types? X bar R, X bar S, IMR. And then C chart, U chart, P chart, and NP chart. And now all the all the 7 we divide into 2 groups. 3 for continuous data, 4 for attribute data. Am I right? 3 for continuous data, 4 for attribute data. And within the 3, when will we use IMR chart?
For
When the number of
individual
yes.
sample is
Which
one.
Yeah, number of samples at a time you take is only 1. That's the time you must go for IMR chart. When number of samples can be multiple, and if it is less than 8, you will go for
X bar
X
R.
bar R chart. When the number of samples are more than 8, we go for X bar yes. Now 3 charts, how to use you understood. Now coming on to the other side, 4. When will you use C chart or U chart? And when will you use P chart or NP chart? Now this 4 I divide into 2 groups. C and U on one side, P and NP on other side. When will I use P and NP? To monitor the defectives. To monitor the defectives. C and U I will use to monitor the defects. Number of defects, blowholes in my castings I monitor. Number of blowholes or the number of dimensional issues I check. Every day there are every shift or every single hour 5 defects are related to dimensional issue. Now what is that I'm checking? I'm checking a defect. Every shift, every hour, 10 pieces are rejected. Now what is that I'm interested? I'm interested in the defectives. So you need to understand whether you are trying to control the defects or trying to control the defectives. If it is defect, you are left with only C and U chart. If it is defective, you are left with only P and NP. And now,
Sir, just one moment, sir. Are you trying to present something? Because we are not.
no, I am only speaking. I'm only speaking. But this is just a table which you can see it tabulated. That is there in the thing, in the manual you can see. But you can definitely store it in your mind, right? So what is that I'm saying? Yes, the P or NP. How to choose between P or NP? If your subgroup size is constant always, every single day, every shift, every 1 hour, you have the habit of taking 5 samples. That means your subgroup size is fixed. Now you are monitoring defective. Now you need to use plot NP chart. Clear? Now you need to plot NP chart. Suppose if your subgroup size is not fixed. For example, every shift you calculate the percentage defective, but the number of units you produced in a shift is not constant. Number of units you produce in a shift is not constant, and you monitor the number of defective pieces with respect to all the units you produced. So every single shift, the variable number of units you produce. And now what happened? Your sample size or the subgroup size is not fixed. Still you calculate the percentage defective and plot it. Now you should go for P chart, right? And similarly for C and U chart, C and U chart are meant for monitoring the defects, out of which when your subgroup size is fixed, you need to use C chart. When your subgroup size is not fixed, if it is variable, you can use U chart. Hope it is clear to all of you. Right. So what I do is I'll help you plot a control chart using Minitab. Do you all see my Minitab screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. So let me open some data file, a worksheet, sample data, camshaft, open. Now, this is the data, column number 1. There are about 100 data. There are about 100 data. And now the data collection plan is every time the quality inspector goes to the line, the camshaft manufacturing line, or see all of you, though if you Just to see the number as a metric for your business. That's all. It can be a camshaft length, or it can be the delivery time, or it can be anything, or it can be a concentration of a chemical, or it can be hardness of a material. For all, we as a black belt, we as a statistician, everything is just a number. You take me inside any factory, I'll see the factory as only with some numbers. Don't worry about the kind of product and kind of service they are offering. All that required is you should be able to see everything through numbers.
Yes.
So it is written as length. It can be length of anything.
Yes.
And every time your quality inspector goes, he collects 5 samples. Every time he takes 5 samples. And totally how many data he has? 100 data. 5 at a time. So the subgroup size, or sometimes people call it as sample size, is 5, right? The subgroup size is 5. Now total readings are 100. Now can somebody tell me how many number of subgroups are there? How many number of subgroups?
20.
20 subgroups, right? And every day the company has, let's say this particular company has 4 shift. Company has 4 shift, right? On day one, every shift they take 1 reading. Every shift number 1, they take 5 reading. Shift number 2, they take 5 reading. Shift number 3, they take 5 sample. Shift number 4, they take 5 sample. So in a day, how many readings, how many samples they have taken? 20. Likewise, it goes on for 5 days. Day number 1, 20. Day number 2, another 20 sample. Day number 3, another 20 sample. Day 4 and day 5. So totally 5 days, 100 data they got. And now with the 100 data, this is the data collection plan, right? With this 100 data, you want to understand whether your process is under statistical control or not, right? You want to understand whether your process is under statistical control or not. And now, one thing all of you must understand while collecting data is, what is your subgroup size is? Subgroup size is 5. So whenever your quality inspector collects a sample, he has to collect 5 samples. Please advise him to select the 5 sample within a short period of time. Within a short period of time. Otherwise, what happened when he picks the sample, considering a longer time, let's say first shift 10 o'clock 1 sample, 11 o'clock 1 sample, 12 o'clock 1 sample, then what will happen? The within batch variation may increase. So we need to actually now understand what is within batch variation. In order to keep the within batch variation minimum, the idea followed should be all the 5 samples should be collected within a short period of time. Let him go, collect 5 samples and come back. Let him not go 5 times and bring it, right? Let him go 1 time and then bring all the 5. That idea should be followed. And now, tell me the length is a continuous data or discrete data? Somebody tell me length is a continuous data. And continuous data and subgroup size is 5. Now tell me which control chart I should plot.
NP.
X bar R. X bar R.
Very good. I will go for X bar. Oh, it's not okay. X bar R chart. So I can't type here. I'll type somewhere here. Okay, my control chart will be X bar R chart. Very clear, right? This is what we discussed, X bar R chart. Now, X bar R chart means it's a single one control chart or 2 different control chart. It's 2 different control chart. One is X bar, another one is R. Am I right? One is X bar chart, another one is R chart. Now, which one I should plot first? R chart I should plot first or X bar chart I should plot first? I should plot the R chart first and then I should plot the X bar chart. Clear?
Yes.
There is a logic because control chart means you have a control limit. Am I right? You have an upper control limit, you have a lower control limit. For calculation of upper control limit and lower control limit, R value is used. R value is used while calculating the control limit for X bar chart. So it is very important your R chart remains in control to calculate the control limits for your X bar chart, right? So that is why always people plot the R chart first, and if R chart is under control, then only they will plot the X bar chart. Otherwise, no job to plot the X bar chart at all, right? Number one. Number two, what is this R chart will help you to understand? Can somebody tell me R chart will help you to understand? What is that it is helping you to understand? The variation within the batch. Variation within the batch. Now, what is this X bar chart is helping you to understand? The variation between the batches. What is variation within batch and what is variation between batch? What do I produce within a particular shift? I don't want to have a lot of variation. Am I correct?
Yes.
One shift means, let us say 8 hours. In 8 hours, I produce thousands of units. You want all 1,000 units to be almost same? Am I correct?
Yes.
If all 1,000 units are almost same, then the range calculated using the 1,000 data will be minimum. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Right or not?
Right, sir.
So range helps you to understand whether the variation you maintain within a batch is minimum or maximum. If it is minimum, then all the points plotted in the range chart will be under the control limit. So your person, your quality inspector can select sample anytime during the shift. You all understand? If the range is out of control, you have variation within the shift. You have to collect lot of data within the shift. How the if the variation is too much, then your inspection job itself will become a main job. Every 1 hour you must collect the sample. Why do you collect every 1 hour? Because every 1 hour, the variation can increase. But if you properly standardize the process, improve the process, the whole shift, there won't be any variation. If there are any variation, it will be very minimum. Under such situation only, you can minimize your inspection job. Please understand, from the Lean's perspective, inspection job is a wasteful activity. According to the definition of Lean, by inspecting a component, you are not adding any value. Am I correct?
Yes.
Inspecting a component, we are not adding any value. So we must do less of non-value adding job to achieve the operational excellence. So how can you do that? Only by standardizing the process and then minimizing the variation. So R charts helps you to understand within batch variation. Now let us assume we have a very minimum of within batch variation. That means I produce 1,000 units within a shift. I no need to inspect all 1,000. I will inspect only 5. Do you now understand why we stick to just 5 sample, not inspecting all the 1,000? It is because R chart is under control. It is because the within batch variation is minimum. If within batch variation is minimum, my sample can represent the entire batch. Whatever I observe in my sample, that will be the experience with all the products manufactured in the shift. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, within batch variation is good. Now, what is next important to me? When will you take the next sample? First shift, you have taken one sample. When will be the next sample?
Next shift.
Next shift. Why are you taking again sample from the next shift? You wanted to see that between batch. You wanted to see that whatever quality you maintained in shift number 1, which is good, you wanted to maintain in shift number 2 also. Am I right?
Right.
This is called between batch variation. Whether my customer receives a product which is manufactured at shift 1, or whether a customer receives the product which I manufactured in shift number 2, the experience should be same. Am I right? I cannot say shift number 2 will be midnight and so the quality will be bad. I cannot say that. So there are 2 things I need to maintain in order to ensure my customer gets the same experience and it is always a pleasant experience. In order to keep it, a same experience, I need to take care of 2 things. One is R chart under control. Another thing is X bar chart also under control. R chart ensures the variations are minimum within the batch, and X bar chart ensures the variations are minimum between the batch. How do I compare my score with your score? I have written 5 exam, you have written 5 exam. How can I compare? I'll take my average, I'll take your average, and then find out the difference. So average helps me to always compare the difference between. That is why I need an X bar chart to monitor the between batch variation. Within batch variation is control, between batch variation also under control. That means when I close my eyes, pick up a sample from your company, all products will have the same feeling, will give me the same feeling. Am I right?
Yes.
If the same feeling is one thing and good feeling is other thing. When the good feeling will have, when I will get the good feeling, I will get a good feeling when my X bar is equal to the target. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
As simple as that. And at the same time, R should be minimum.
Minimum.
That's all. This is what is needs to be taken care to retain the benefit, to sustain the benefit, right? That is what I'm going to check here with this data. Please note, you might think you take only 5 sample, and how come the 5 sample can take care of the quality, entire quality? 5 sample represent the parts you produced and throughout the shift. Am I right? This statement will hold good only when you keep the within batch variation under control. If within batch variation is not under control, your sample will speak something and reality will be something else. Many people have seen many companies simply they ignore the signals that are coming from the control chart. A point goes out of the control chart. People are they don't care. Just one point going out. What is there? Leave it. What is that 1 point represents? 1 point you got from a subgroup. Am I right? And that subgroup represents the results of the entire shift. What is that? What is the result of the entire shift? 1000 units. So 1 point going out of the control limit means actually 1000 products going out of the control limit. So can we take 1 point going out of the control limit very lightly? No. Even if 1 point falls outside the control limit, you must take it seriously. It all depends on how do you collect the sample. You take sample every single hour, then that 1 hour production is gone. You take sample out of every shift, then 1 shift production is gone, isn't it? That is the meaning. So we need to understand what kind of signal our control chart is giving and what it actually means in real time. So now we go to stat. Go to the control charts, variable chart for subgroup, and there is X bar R chart. Click that. And now all observation are in one column. Yes, we have typed all the 100 data in a single column. So I select that. I click here. And where is my data? Data is in column number 1. I select that. What is your subgroup size right now?
5.
Your quality checkers are collecting 5 subgroup. Now X bar R chart option. There are a lot of tests exist. As a black belt, in my opinion, you have to create your own testing criteria. Don't depend on what is written on certain book. If you attend our training program, I know what kind of black belt we are producing. I know what kind of black belt we are producing. So what kind of questions to be given to you, that we know very well. Am I correct or not?
Yeah.
Similarly, you can't just settle with a standard testing. A point going out of control limit is seriously an issue without any doubt. But in my process, I have improved the process like anything. A point going out of the warning limit may also be a serious issue for me, because I want to seriously see that every time I get outputs closer to the target. So a point inside the control limit may also be a special cause if you have the intelligence to recognize that a point going out of your warning limit cannot happen easily, because you designed and developed and maintaining the process in such a way that point cannot easily go beyond warning limit, right? So you can set your own rules. Please understand. It's not that point has to come out of the control limit to understand the special cause. Even if all the points are inside the control limit, then also there could be a special cause. It is something like, If see now our training program, there are 20 people, but 3 or 4 people did not come. Is it a special cause? Why they did not come? It's a special cause. Am I correct or not? Yes or no?
Yeah.
They have some
Yes.
reasons. They are not well, they have some other job, they have some office meeting. That's a special cause. That needs to be fixed for a effective learning. Now 17 of you are inside. Now tell me, is that all 17 of you are learning very effectively? Still there could be a chance. Still somebody can parallelly attend the meeting, can parallelly do something on the other side. So points, even if you get all the points inside the control limit, still special cause can be there. You must have the maturity to recognize the special cause. Any kind of pattern which is non-random, when you observe, even inside the control limit, that can be an indication of a special cause. You need to fix it immediately, right? So you can choose, so many guidelines are there, you can choose it. And now everything is now included. And now maybe let me simplify, let me not complicate initially. So let me remove all other things. Yes. See here, I ticked only this. That means a point going out of the control limit is considered a special cause as of now. But as I gain more and more maturity, I will start in suspecting everything, isn't it? Even if somebody scores slightly 2 marks lower, then also I will ask them a question, right? Well, they got the pass mark, but they have got only 95. Why did you lose 5 marks? That can be my question, right? So first, initially, I want to check only control limit, which are 3 sigma limit. I give OK, and again I give OK. Now my control charts are plotted. Which one I should look first? R chart or X bar chart?
R chart.
R chart. You must
R
plot
chart.
this and you must look at this. Now tell me, is that your R chart is under control?
Control, sir, within the limit.
Yes, under control. What does it mean practically? Every shift
Sample.
over a period of 8 hours, all that you produce will give the same experience to your customer. Am I right? When first shift, I produce 100 cakes and 100 people eat my cake. All 100 people will get the same feeling. All 100 people will get the same feeling. This is what my control chart is telling me. Actually, I want that to happen. So R chart in control. Now I look at the X bar chart. And now tell me, is that your X bar chart is under control?
No.
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 Because
1 point out of 9.
eighth sample, which is probably collected on shift number 4 on day number 2, the average is out of control. On that particular subgroup actually represents 1000 units which I produced on shift number 4 on day 2. All 1000 units now should be inspected 100%. Do you understand the seriousness?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what happened? If you ignore this point and send all remaining products to your customer is anyway going to send everything back to you. So instead of that, you can alert yourself. So a point coming out of the control limit is a strong signal. You must stop the process. You must investigate. You must figure out what is that factor actually causing this X bar to go out. And then you must fix it. And then only you must continue, right? This is how our control charts are helping you to monitor the quality in your offerings. It can be a product, it can be a service. But for me, it is just a number. As long as my numbers stay inside the control limit, my customer experience is going to be same. If the number is on the target, my customer experience is not only same, it is a pleasant experience. This is how control charts are helping you. You can plot whatever control chart required. In no time, you can plot the control chart in Minitab. Is that clear to all of you?
Sir, I have one question.
Yes.
This range chart, if in a practical situation, you keep plotting it on a daily basis.
Yes.
So the range limits will keep varying as and when the data keeps accumulating. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, range will keep varying, but all that I expect is at least the variation should be under control. Upper control limit and lower control limits are there. Yet there will be variation because we cannot eliminate variation. We cannot eliminate variation. There will be variation, but that variation should not give me a different experience to my customer. My customer, if you allow the variation to increase heavily, then my customer itself can find out just by looking at my product. He will say, don't send it to me. It should not go to that extent. So keep that variation under control. Since you cannot eliminate, you must at least control. Got it, sir?
Based on
Yes.
based on the R chart, when you you calculate the X bar R, or you draw the X bar R chart.
Exactly.
So as and when the
Because,
range keeps changing, your control limits keep changing. So
yes, if let us say a point falls outside the control limit in an R chart, right? That means the range is high. Why the range has gone high? What is range? The highest value minus lowest value. You want 100 mm, but the highest reading in your sample is 105, and lowest reading in your sample is 92. Now what is the difference? 105 and 92, 13.
okay.
Requirement is 100, but what is the range you are getting? The range you are getting is 13. You can't have this much range. You are not going to satisfy your customer, right? And customer has given you only 100 plus or minus 0.5. Now your reading should be 100.1 or 99.9. If your readings are 100.1 and 99.9, what is the range now?
0.2.
0.2. So we need to see that our range is always lower. If the range is lower, in the range chart, there will be 3 lines: a center line, an upper control limit, and a lower control limit. The upper control limit will be at a distance of 3 sigma above the center line. Lower control limit will be at a distance of 3 sigma below the center line. And center line is the average of the ranges. Center line is the average of the ranges. So any range of any subgroup, when you plot it, it should fall within the control limit, because I know there is 99.73% chance that all the points will fall inside the control limit. Am I right? When such a chance is there, why your range is going outside the control limit? Somebody is not following the procedure. Am I correct? Is it not an indication of a special cause?
That's only we call it as internal control. If range is more is not within the whatever may be our this thing internal targeted, we can say it as internal targeted limits. Then we have to increase our inspection for that particular.
Exactly.
So because that's how to strengthen the internal control, where we have to strengthen, what extent we have to go for internal inspection, also part of.
So giving the same experience is stability, giving the pleasant experience is capability. Which is important? Both are important. Giving the same experience and giving the pleasant experience, right? But if you are not able to give the same experience, I am telling you, you will never be able to give a pleasant experience. So stability is much more important, or stability is a prerequisite for building your capability. If your company is struggling to maintain the stability, you should not run a DMAC project. You should simply practice SPC, that's all.
Yeah.
Simply practice SPC. If SPC you are able to implement, now you qualify for doing Six Sigma and other things. DMAC projects can be run. Any project can be run, right? So that's it from me on control chart. And I think if there are no more questions, we can move on to the next agenda. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. I have pleasure in welcoming Mr. Vinod Shankar. I think you have already met him on our phase 1. He has brought some case studies to you, and now probably he will be discussing with you certain topics. Particularly, his focus will be on helping you on how to use Minitab